and more. We are now joined by Bruce Feldman, theathletic.com, and we will absolutely talk about his column about the most difficult, toughest places to play in college football that he released last week before he got away for a few days with his family. Bruce, thanks for your time. 33 teams, I saw the number, 33 teams have changed conferences, although some still have to wait till August officially, since Texas and OU made, or Brent Zerneman broke the story. Did you realize there was that many teams that have changed conferences?
Not that many, no. Obviously, the big ticket items of A&M and OU, but yeah, the fallout has been pretty spectacular. And because it's gone on for so long, I just feel like there's a lot of stuff that kind of gets lost in the margins, quite honestly.
Bruce, much was made last week about those. I want to get to the top 10. I feel like they should have had you guys, and they had a lot of media people in to play the game, but they should have asked you guys first of what their top places to play were, because even though there are some places on the list that are hard, if it's going to affect the game, then they really need to get a more accurate feel for it. And you guys, we've all who've gone to games kind of know the depth a little bit better maybe than some computer programmers.
Yeah, it was a little surprising to see A&M won. I mean, it's an awesome venue in itself, but it's funny. I think I've been there 3 or 4 games, and it's been loud. The press box is rocked, and I think they've lost every home game that I've been to. I saw Johnny Manziel and first game against Florida, they lost. Saw the rematch against Alabama after Johnny football and Alabama, had won in Tuscaloosa. And then, even remember LSU where it was a Thanksgiving game and like Danny Etling looked like Peyton Manning against the Aggies. So, it's crazy how that kind of stuff can work out.
Bruce, what did you feel was, and you got your list, Death Valley #1, Bryant-Denny. I saw a lot of conversation about that being too high, but you got that at #2. But what was maybe the one that was just the most obvious, and maybe egregious is too strong a word, but the most obvious correction for you?
I mean, I just thought it was A&M being that high, there's some amazing home field advantages in the SEC. I just didn't feel like that one kind of measured, especially in light of what LSU is and what the atmosphere is like. And they play most of their games on Saturday nights, and that place gets pretty lathered up and ready to go. It's just such an advantage for them. To me, that was the biggest misstep.
Autzen Stadium, Oregon, and what they have with Coach Lanning, and now they enter the Big Ten as a smaller stadium. See, I think sometimes people say that it has to be large to be loud or tough to play, and that's not always the case. Your thoughts about Autzen Stadium and what they have built there with Oregon football?
Yeah, it's a unique scene. I mean, it's in a beautiful part of the country. I remember, I wrote this in the story. One of the coaches I knew who was getting ready to play on the road at Autzen, he was like, they pipe the noise in there. There's no way it's that loud. And that team ended up getting blown out by like 3 touchdowns. It's just, there's a lot of energy in there. And I feel like some of the stadiums, this one fits in that category. Like maybe, I think the Big 12 fans will see when Utah is now in the Big 12, that it's one of these like pound for pound stadiums that just has a unique feel to it, even though it's not these supersized, Tennessee and Penn State and LSU and Alabama where they're, over 100,000. This one's a little more than half that. It's like 60,000, but it's still pretty intense and has a great feel to it.
Bruce, were there any stadiums in that top 25 that you thought, come on now?
I don't know. There was nothing I felt like was that out of character, but it's kind of, once you get to that many, I feel like there's some, like I was surprised Tennessee was not in the top 10. I mean, just being there, being on the field, because there's a bunch of these games I've been on the sideline and on the field for games. It's just, you kind of can get a different feel for it than maybe what it's like in the press box or certainly on TV.
Bruce, it's been a very interesting offseason, a very busy offseason. We're now entering Media Days month. Obviously, all of the onboarding and still more to come of all the realignment stories this past couple of years now coming to fruition. Does July 2024 feel like it's got more chaos in store? Is there anything in particular looking forward to this month? Just what are the vibes, for lack of a better term, that you kind of get around college football as we enter this last stretch of, quiet that we haven't really had?
Yeah, you used the term onboarding before, and I like that just because I was thinking I'll be in Vegas and just to see the just the compilation. Because last year was a little weird. Texas, so you were obviously outgoing. You have the 4 new teams. Now those 4 teams aren't going to feel that new because you now have another batch that are coming in for the Big 12, and I just feel like it's going to take a little getting used to in the practicality purposes, and I think that'll be fun. I mean, I feel like, especially in the Big 12, to me, it's such, given how far Oregon 3 years, Arizona was terrible 3 years ago, and now they just won 10 games, and they have pretty much all their firepower back. They lost a few guys who followed Jet Fish to Washington, but you take that school, you take a Utah that was so injured last year, now they're back at full strength, at least on offense. You combine that with some of the other programs that I feel like, West Virginia, people thought Neil Brown was on the hot seat at this point last year, and then they, had a big season last year, and they have a lot of their star power back, and just like what, some of these rebuilds have looked like, and I feel like it's just an interesting time to see how the kind of reboots are happening all around the country.
When the announcement came down in late July of 2021, Brett Zerleman had a story, and of course everybody stopped what they were doing. Mack Rhodes was trying to enjoy a vacation. Every time he goes on vacations, all hell breaks loose in realignment. And I remember texting him. Where were you? What did you think at the time?
I think I was on a plane back from the SEC media days, because I think it was Brent's story. Might have been the 4th day of the 4 days. I'm not like, it's been a little while now and a lot of stuff has gone on, but I remember being on a plane when that happened. And I just think it might have been from SEC media days, because I think I left, I want to say it was the last day there. That might be wrong, but I definitely remember being on a plane, and, good on Brent and the Chronicle for getting that was a massive story. And the dominoes started to fall from there. I don't think any of us expected, speaking for myself, I don't think we expected as much to happen as quickly as it did after that.
When you heard the story, did you think Oklahoma or Texas at that time was more prepared to join the SEC of either two?
Oh, it's a good question. I didn't think Texas was as prepared as it is now, looking back, because there was a lot of TBD around it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sark, they had come out of Tom Herman, where it was a really up and down tenure. And Sark had never won, that never had a big winner, at his time. He did a good job taking Washington from a winless season to making them respectable, but he didn't get them really over the hump. And then it was a disastrous year and a half or whatever it was at USC. He obviously made a lot of growth personally and professionally from his time under Nick Saban. He hired a great staff, and he's done a terrific job. And I think Del Conte, Chris Del Conte's done a lot of really good things around the athletic department, around the football. There's just been a lot of good things. Oklahoma was certainly in transition when Lincoln left as quickly as he did. And then, year 2 was much better, obviously, with Venables. And I feel like they're in a pretty good place. I think they have a terrific young quarterback to build around, and it seems like they're recruiting well. So, Texas was in a better place coming out of last year just because of what they had. But Oklahoma closed the gap, and we know they got great leadership with Joe Castiglione, which, he's as good as there is at ADs. And I think because you have 2 guys like that who are so good at what they do at the top of the organization, I think they're in good places.
Bruce, a couple weeks ago, you did your story on your first pass at the 12-team projection for this year. You have Utah at 4th. They're getting a first-round bye. They set up well coming in. Is it because of the experience that they have coming back with Rising and that?
It is. You have a really good dual-threat quarterback who's a 7th-year senior. You have an All-American caliber tight end, Brant Keefe, who has been such a playmaker. He missed half of last year. I think you have a really good defensive structure. Now they got to replace both safeties. They got to replace a terrific, defensive lineman in Jonah Ellis. But just the experience they have, I feel like, we've gotten into this a lot on our podcast, The Audible, over the last couple of weeks. The Big 12 is the most parity league, not surprise me. I would be surprised if anybody runs the table and goes 12-0. But I think there's a lot of teams who could be anywhere from 5 wins to 10 wins, depending on some injuries. And I think the one I feel the most confident is Utah right now, just because of the leadership they have.
What were your thoughts about the Utah story today about Morgan Scalley being coach in waiting? We've seen those examples before. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. He's been that way before and then had to kind of step back a little bit. Your thoughts, do you think that means Kyle Whittingham is on the verge of maybe another year, or just are they being proactive?
I think they're being proactive. I mean, he's been Kyle Whittingham's in great physical shape. He's a grandfather who's, I've had to work out as the coach in waiting part. But it was interesting timing because this thing has been kind of bubbled behind the scenes for like 6 months. But obviously, with a lot of news coming out today, that was the launch date of this. We'll see how it goes. I mean, Oregon's a really, really good defensive coordinator who has been a key piece of them sustaining a lot of success over a long time there now.
Bruce, last thing, back to the stadium, the story you wrote in The Athletic last week. If you look, BYU's got an incredible night atmosphere. In a lot of places, it's hard to win at Ames at night. We know about what Utah is because of their success. Where would you put Stillwater and T. Boone's Pickens Stadium in that, as far as just massive, almost headache-type noise that starts from the time that game kicks off?
Yeah, I think as a sideline reporter, you'd have just because they are so close. Like, TV doesn't do it justice. I don't even think, there's a few places in the Big 12, like, Oklahoma was a tight sideline, but not like Stillwater, because you had the Roughnecks banging on the outskirts of the stadium. It's not a huge place, but it's on top of you. It's loud. They take pride in it. They've obviously had a lot of good teams over the years. I mean, to me, Lubbock gets pretty loud.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, but of the ones besides the Muss and Utah, and again, smaller stadium, I would probably put from my experience, Oklahoma State is as raucous as any of them because of that, Roughnecks banging on they're right on top of the opposing team like that.
Bruce, we said this to Sam Conn. We had him on last week, and Max Olson. We have been able to kind of jump up to what we're doing with our subscribers with this show that started from scratch 4 years ago. Above 50,000 subscribers. You and a lot of the guests that we have from theathletic.com, Stewart among others, we really do appreciate you being a part of the show, and you're a part of our growth as well, and we thank you for that.
I appreciate it. You guys do a great job. I truly appreciate it. And I know, the feelings mutual with all my colleagues about what you guys do there.
Thank you, Bruce. Bruce Feldman, theathletic.com with us.